Hi everyone, I'm Karnak. It's your buddy, it's your pal. Thank you for joining me. This is Star Wars Armada Explained. I know I'm finally doing a Wave 10 upgrade card. It's crazy. Sorry for the delays. Finally had some time today where I could dedicate actually making some videos today. If you haven't seen my other video about some upcoming Armada events, I encourage you to watch that. But we're going to focus on Thermal Shields. So Thermal Shields is an upgrade card, obviously. And as we get into it, as normal, we're going to break it down. I'm going to read everything, and then we'll go through bit by bit about some interactions. So for Thermal Shields, you can see there it's not a unique card. You can equip this to medium or large ships as it specifies there. So it means that as many copies as you have, for as many medium or large ships you have, you can equip as many as you want. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see it's a defensive retrofit card. Opposite corner, you'll see that's only 5 points, but it is faction locked to the Republic and Separatists only. They're the only ones who have access to thermal shields, which, debatable as that is, I understand, thermal shields, if you ever watch the show, it was really only ever mentioned in the Clone Wars show on those ships, so, I can see why they faction locked it. I definitely would have preferred maybe seeing this available to all factions, but I can understand that maybe a Star Destroyer or having this may not be a good idea. So, who knows? I wasn't involved in this decision or that decision-making process for this part, so I was a playtester for this wave, but that's just how it came out to be. Anyway, let's get into the card. So, medium or large ship only, while defending. After the attacker gathers die, you may spend 1 brace token. If you do, choose and remove half the die in the attack pool rounded down. So, at initial reading, this card sounds so, so fantastic, so amazing, so great, and it is a good card. The issue is with this card, though, is that it's only that upfront removal of die. It doesn't stop ships from adding more die after the fact. So in terms of how does this compare to electronic countermeasures? I know that's the biggest comparison people have. So remember, thermal shields is 5 points. You're able to spend that brace token before an attacker is able to accuracy it and prevent you from being able to use it. And then ECM is just allowing you to spend a defense token even if it was accuracy. But again, that's 7 points. It has a refresh cost. So, kind of pros versus cons. What it comes down to is thermal shields is far better against that huge haymaker attack that large ships like to chuck out. While ECM, I feel, is a lot better in terms of thermals is great against large initial die pool haymakers, but it's not great at if a bunch of die is added in after the fact, compared to you might save more damage and it might be more beneficial to bring ECM, and you're able to use that to really help save ultimately more damage. But again, ECM is kind of like a once per round thing, and thermal shields, I mean, if you got multiple brace tokens or just a 1 brace token, you can still spend it twice. So I mean, ultimately, what does it come down to? What's helpful, thermal shields or ECM? It just really depends on what your focus is. Because I've used thermal shields, and sure, I took out 3 die, but if it's 3 red die and 3 damage, it's probably about the same amount that brace normally would have saved me anyway. Compared to somebody who I took out 3 die, but then they added 4 die back in. It doesn't seem like it really helped out compared to if I had just been able to brace and just reduce more damage that way. So pros and cons, but we'll get into the card now. Enough doing some debates between thermal shields and ECM. I know that's the big one. It just all comes down to style of play and what you're trying to do. One more point I do want to make, though, is that thermal shields is really good against onagers, so that kind of helps out these factions being able to get past that ignition punch that onagers like to throw out. All right. So what are some of the specifics of thermal shields? So again, it says while defending, after the attacker gathers die. So once the attacker picks up their die pool and says, I'm getting ready to roll my attack pool, you say, excuse me, I'm going to spend 1 brace token. And since I've done that, I can now choose and remove half the die in the attack pool rounded down. So if they have 8 die in their pool that they had picked up, you can say, okay, I want to remove, let's say they have 3 blue and 3 red and 2 black. You can say, you know what, I want you to remove the 2 black die, and I want you to remove 2 blue die. And now you're left with 3 red die and 1 blue die. Then the attacker then rolls their attack pool. That's the timing of thermal shields. So there's a few other little interactions here that have been officially clarified, and again, I want to make sure I'm pointing out. So let's where do I have it? Oh, I have it over here to keep it out of the way. Here we go. I have to be very careful about what pages I have open on the Atomic Mass Rules forum, I found out, so you guys can't see certain things. So let's get into the frequently asked questions. Question: if I use Intel Officer to choose a defensive token that was spent during an earlier step of the current attack, like with thermal shields, for example, is that defense token discarded? No. Intel Officer only affects defense tokens spent after the card text is resolved, the card text being Intel Officer's text. It will not affect defense tokens that were spent prior to its timing window. So no, you just can't use Intel Officer to choose the brace defense token that somebody had spent for thermal shields and be like, aha, see, you spent it, you have to get rid of it. No, that's not how the timing of that card works. What about Mon Carin? So Mon Carin in thermal shields, if thermal shields was resolved and a brace defense token was spent by the defender now cannot spend any additional defense tokens for this attack if you are utilizing Mon Carin, because Mon Carin looks at the whole window of, was a token spent? Yes, okay, my effect is resolving. People had questions about when does Commander Sato take place? When does obstruction take place? So does Commander Sato replace die before or after thermal shield? The answer is after. The timing step for thermal shields is after an attacker gathers die. Commander Sato's timing step is before rolling, which occurs afterwards. So you gather die first, and then thermal shields is after I've gathered that die, you remove some. And Commander Sato's timing is before rolling. So I've gathered, I have to gather before I can roll. Does that make sense? If you look at the rules reference, you'll see that for the attack steps broken down, where it says roll attack die, it says gather attack die to form the attack pool and roll those dice. So again, you gather and then you roll. It says it right there in the rule book, but this little thing, a lot of people just skip right over that small section and they don't quite understand the timing for that. But again, this has been specifically answered. You gather your die first, thermals comes into effect. Sato is before you actually roll those die. It's the same thing with obstruction. Obstruction, where do I have that at? Well, I can just bring it up in the rule books if I say obstruction. Oh, not there. Not that one. Obstruction. Wait, where did it go? Oh, it's still right. No, select the. There we go. Obstruction. No, it still doesn't want to do it. Oh, it's looking for obstruct, not obstruction, of course. Where is, that's line of sight. Here we go, obstacles. Here we go, obstructed. If the attack is obstructed by one or more ship's obstacles, the attacker must choose or remove one die from their attack pool before they roll. So same timing as Sato. Before they roll die during the roll attack die step. So same timing as Sato, so you get to choose. So again, gather die, thermals happens, and then obstruction happens. And because of this unique timing scenario, actually the attack step had to be changed to accommodate the fact that suddenly you could have the scenario where, say, you had 2 die and the attack was obstructed. Well, thermals would reduce your die from 2 to 1, and then obstruction would happen and remove that die. And then you actually couldn't roll an attack pool. And previously in Armada, what would happen is if you couldn't gather a die pool to roll, the initial consensus and kind of what was always hinted at by Fantasy Flight Games was just the attack just doesn't happen and you can just reattack. Well, obviously that's an issue because for thermal shields, you spent a token. You can't get your token back. So somebody could just reattack the same spot and you're out your defense token. And so anyway, the attack steps change. So if you want to see the updated attack steps, go to the rules reference corrections on the rules forum, and you'll see where that has been changed now. How essentially, if you don't roll an attack pool, it still counts as an attack now. So, you know, that way it seems fair to both the attacker and defender. And then, you know, you can read up on those changes. But pretty much that's how that works now, in case people were wondering about that. What are some other things with thermal shields? So again, some people were wondering about early warning system and obstruction. It's like if a ship has thermal shields and early warning system equipped or is obstructed, what happens first? Again, thermal shields takes place after gathering, and obstruction takes place before rolling. Okay, perfect. What about thermal shields on the concentrate fire dial? You can only add, if you have concentrate fire, you can only add a die into your attack pool if there's a die in that attack pool. So for example, if there's no black die in your attack pool, you can't concentrate black die into your attack pool. Let's say even if you started with like 2 black die and 2 red die, if thermal shields removes your 2 black die and you roll 2 red die, again, there's no black die in your attack pool. You can't concentrate fire in a black die just because it was in there previously. It doesn't matter. It's not in there right now. If you have other effects that can add die in, like external racks, then you can concentrate fire in, a black die, because then that is currently in your attack pool. Some people had questions about planetary ion cannons and thermal shields. May a ship use thermal shields to reduce the planetary ion cannon objective attack? The answer to that is yep. Yes, it's still considered a ship attack. Some people were wanting to know if you could use thermal shields while at speed 0. No, per the rules reference guide. If defender speed is 0, it cannot spend defense tokens while defending. Obviously, if you're an attacker, you can still spend defense tokens to resolve attack effects. Luminari, some people had questions about Luminari and thermal shields. Again, for Luminari and thermal shields, at any point, if the attacker spends fewer than 2 defense tokens, regardless of when the attack those tokens are spent, you can resolve Luminari. Somebody was trying to say that, because you spent the brace token before the spend defense token step, that Luminari wouldn't resolve, and that's not the case. You can still definitely have Luminari resolve. You just can't choose the token that you spend as the defender. So that is some of the questions and things that were all in here. Again, I want to make sure I was pointing that all out. But of course, if you still have any questions, be sure to leave some comments. If it's like rules questions, please be sure to go to the rules forum and ask them there. But that's thermal shields. I can't do like any more like speculation or anything like that because of my position with Atomic Mass Games as a contractor. They've asked that I avoid doing speculative information type stuff. So that's all I'm able to show, do, talk about. But of course, if you find other interactions and things that you have questions about, I probably do know about them. I just can't talk about them. Again, just comment about them or make a rules question. But you all are fantastic. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope you have a great day today.